Welcome to the show, SEC Football Live, although not SEC and not live today. So in truly ironic fashion, thanks for joining the show. Doug Lesmerises, of course, joining us, longtime writer, college football expert extraordinary, covering the Ohio State Buckeyes, Big Ten football, a variety of other things. I am Braden Gall, brought to you by ML Rose, the Bill and Doug Show, everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Doug, I guess it's good morning. How are you, sir?
It is good morning. I'm here in Dallas and I just ate 13 pieces of bacon for breakfast, so I'm ready to talk some ball.
Look, they do know how to cook both cow and pig in Texas. That is for sure. So I want to get into a lot of different stuff here. We'll talk Indiana and Bama in a second, but I want to focus on the Ohio State game to start. And that is like I keep beating my head against this game from an analysis standpoint because I don't trust Carson Beck at all on offense in a critical situation. But I trust their defense, Miami's, in a really big way. Is there another way to look at the game outside of Miami's defense is good enough to keep them in this game? They are an elite group of NFL players, and they can match up with Ohio State. But I don't know how Carson Beck and even Mark Fletcher consistently move the football against an Ohio State defense. Is that too oversimplification of it all?
No, I feel like we're at this point of analyzing these games for 3 weeks that we all talked about the obvious, and now we're all waiting to wait, is there something we're not seeing? I'm not sure there is in this game, and I think it's a lot like the Indiana-Ohio State game, right? That you understand, and it's just interesting in this playoff. There's a lot of defense-first teams, right? I mean, that you think of what Texas Tech does and what Indiana does, and I think Miami and Ohio State absolutely are defense-first teams, and so that has been the different thing. The Ryan Day era at Ohio State with all the receivers that they've had, and they have a Heisman finalist at quarterback more often than not. You're used to Ohio State being an offensive first team. But the foundation of this Ohio State team is Arvell Reese and Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles and this defense. And then you just say, well, I don't know. Can somebody score 17 on them? Can they score 20 on them? Right? They're giving up 8.2 points per game. I think that's the fewest points per game since Alabama in 2011. Right? And we understand that they haven't been playing lights out offenses every week, but it's hard to score on these guys. And so you start setting a threshold of you tell Julian Sand and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, get us 20 and we like our chances. Right. And so and then Carson Beck and Malachi Toney, is that enough to threaten this defense? And it's hard, I would say no, that I don't see how Miami scores 20 or 17. And then you're back to, okay, well, Indiana beat Ohio State 13-10. Can this Miami defense get enough pressure? Ohio State starting a first-time starter at right guard. Is there enough there that they can literally win without scoring 2 touchdowns? And that seems difficult, but that's how Ohio State lost the one game they lost this year. But yeah, I think you're right on it, Braden. I don't think there's a secret here to how to analyze this.
Where do you attack the Ohio State offense? And I'm not suggesting that they struggled in a way that is nationally struggling. It's just struggling relative to Ohio State level of expectations on offense. Indiana and Texas, the two most difficult defenses they probably played all season, and certainly the lowest output, the lowest yards per play, the least efficiency, fewest points, etc. One of those a loss. Michigan didn't really slow them down as much, but I think that's layered with a lot of external factors there.
Sure.
Illinois and Washington, both solid defenses, not great, but solid, and kind of slowed them down a little bit. Ohio State never really was in danger of losing any of those games outside of Indiana. So what are the things that defenses have done in those games that you remember from this is how you can attack Sand and Smith and Tate and all these guys and actually find some success?
Yeah, it's, Bryant Haynes, the Indiana defensive coordinator, I think everybody acknowledges is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, and they had a good plan. I think they made it hard on Julian Sand, mixing coverages and him not being exactly sure of what to do with certain things. He is a first-year starting quarterback. That was really just a great scheme from them all around. The thing that Julian Sand talked about immediately after that game, and every time we've talked to him since, is that he held the ball too much against Indiana. I think that's both him talking backward and forward. I held the ball too much against Indiana. I got sacked 5 times, which is also saying I can't hold the ball against Miami. I think, my partner Bill Landis talked a lot about in that Ohio State-Indiana game. Ohio State, it's hard with Ohio State because you get Ohio State indoors. They slog through this November of outdoor Big Ten weather. And it's oh man, they've got to survive that. That's how they have to think. It's almost like 2 seasons with Ohio State because they always have NFL guys at receiver, but you've got to be able to survive in potentially bad weather in the Big Ten, and then you get outside in the warm weather or indoors in the playoff, and you can have a track meet. And then Ohio State likes its chances in the track meet, but they almost got shot happy against Indiana. And if you can't protect, then you don't have enough time to take those shots down the field to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. So I think in this game, they can't get shot happy. It's hard. You want to take advantage of those receivers. But it's just been it's not to make excuses for Ohio State, but Carnell Tate missed 3 games with an injury. Jeremiah Smith missed a game and a half. Before the Michigan game, the last time before there were any injuries, when they were really like all the way healthy, against Penn State, they combined for 247 passing yards and 3 touchdown catches. So now they're back, with the 3 weeks off since Indiana. They've both said, like, I'm 100%, like, you're ready to go. You're going to be indoors. So it's like, is that the passing game that you can get back to? Well, not if Ruben Bain's in your grill. You're not gonna, right? Like, they have to be smart about utilizing those guys, but not being so do or die on like, we like our matchups down the field. So I think if you're Miami, you make them work. Red zone struggles. They're like 66% touchdown rate in the red zone, which is in the 30s. Some years under Ryan Day, they're really good. They're among the 10 best offenses in the country. Sometimes they're okay. They're between 30th and 50th. This is an okay red zone offense for Ohio State. And then short yardage, you can get them a little bit, right? They got stopped on a Julian Sand sneak on 4th down. They missed 2 3rd-and-1s against Indiana late in that game. So I think you got to make them work. Take away the deep stuff, pressure them enough that they can't even take some of the shots, and then say, okay, drive down the field, but then you got to convert on some short yardage. You've got to convert in the red zone. And that's where you're only pretty good, not excellent, because a lot of the other stuff you do, whether you blitz Julian Sand or don't blitz him, he's among the best quarterbacks in the country, right? Whether he's inside the pocket or out of the pocket, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So you just got to make him put drives together. Don't give him big stuff, and hope you can stand up on a 3rd or 4th down, which at times the best defenses have done that against them.
I'm fascinated by kind of a new element to the game in college football, which is like NFL coaches. There are certain guys that just sort of build a reputation with enough chances in the postseason as like, man, these guys get in their laboratory with 1 extra week and all of a sudden they've got a wrinkle. Belichick famous for doing this in the NFL postseason. Hey, we're going to have 0 down linemen in this matchup with Peyton Manning or whatever. Like, just comes up with nonsense, right? And it's always super creative. Generally, it works. Now, it's one thing for Saban and Ryan Day or Urban Meyer and Kirby Smart and maybe Dabo. Like, there's like 4 or 5 guys that would get like 35 days off because they were the only teams playing in either the BCS or like sort of the national championship game. And they had plenty of things that they changed. But there is difference now between like the 2-week run up and the 12 different coaches, and no one's yet built a reputation for, hey, I'm really good in the playoffs as a coach, right? Like, it's a thing we haven't really figured out yet. I'm curious, can you pinpoint anything about Ryan Day based on last year and maybe based on what you have covered these couple of weeks? Is there anything that you can pick up on that says like this is where Ryan Day is in the laboratory and has shown that he can, in this situation, take advantage of it and then implement it on the field? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, and I think he saved his job in the playoff last year, right? Like, that was that playoff run to go through Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame, coming off the Michigan loss, redefined the entire Ohio State program in the Ryan Day era. So I think the interesting thing with Ryan Day is, when he took over as the head coach, he was also the offensive coordinator for 5 years. And I always thought he needed to give that up, because then you can be the coach of the whole team. You can work with the defense. You can handle the transfer portal. You can deal with NIL. And you're not just in your play sheet, drawing up, writing plays on a napkin in your coaching office. And so I thought, for the good of the program, he needed to do that. And he did that for the first time last year, and he handed it off to one of his best friends, Chip Kelly. But then I think that's more a 12-month discussion. Like, for me and for Ryan Day to give up play calling, that's more making sure his team's in the right headspace for the Michigan game, that culturally you are the program you want to be. But you know what? In the playoff, you got a little extra time. You can go draw plays on napkins in the playoff. And that's what he is. That's what he loves, right? So I think last year, Chip Kelly did a great job as the offensive coordinator, but I think in the playoff, Ryan Day got a little more hands-on with the offense. And now this year, Brian Hartline, who's the offensive coordinator this year, first-time play caller, he took the South Florida head coaching job. He's still with the team, but Ryan Day has said Ryan Day is going to actually call the plays in this playoff run. So it's by necessity, he needs to be more involved with the nitty gritty of the offense. But I think in the playoff, that's what he wants to do, and it's what's best for the program anyway. He's the best offensive mind on the staff. He just can't be bogged down with that 12 months out of the year. So I think, to your point, I think it does set up for Ryan Day to be a pretty good playoff coach, because he can be that coach of the whole team for 11 months, but in the playoff, if you have time, just like Saban, like you think Saban's, Kirby, those guys are diving in with the defense a little bit more when you have a little bit extra time. Sure they are. So I think that's where Ryan Day is. And I think it's good for him. I think he still likes it, but I think it's good for the team. And actually, the way this has worked out, it's kind of the best of both worlds, that they had Brian Hartline do this. He's one of the best position coaches in college football. But now that he's taken the head coaching job, Ryan Day can say, you know what, I got this for the playoff. And I think it's better for the offense.
Yeah. And it's, Jeremiah, go deep was a big part of last year's run.
Cornell Tate, be healthy.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
Great call.
Unbelievable. Like, honestly, like, just put them on either side of the field and tell the defense to pick your poison at this point. What's fascinating is Miami, of all the teams in the first round, I cannot believe I'm saying this out loud and on the record, but I think Miami actually made among the best adjustments at halftime of any of the teams. Like, and a lot of that's Shannon Dawson, not Mario Cristobal, but Dawson, they specifically game planned around Malachi Toney in the second half, but using him exclusively as a decoy. So it just really, this whole format has allowed for people to be and create and do different things, and I think that's an interesting element to this that we hadn't maybe fully kind of fleshed out as a college football kind of group think. I want to get to the Indiana game here against Alabama as well. You guys, of course, Ohio State and Indiana kind of running on parallel tracks the entire season. Before we do that, ML Rose, if you come to Nashville, Doug, if you ever do, you come on down. We've got 8 great locations all across the city, great drink specials, all good craft local beer, fantastic. They're a big part of the craft beer scene here in Nashville. The best burgers, and according to my wife, the best ranch dipping sauce anywhere she has found in the city. So I don't know if that's too southern for you, but ranch dipping sauce with some waffle flyers and some spicy cheese curds.
Ranch, very attractive to the Midwestern folks too. So that's a good draw to get the people to come down out of the snow and have some ranch.
It's very thick, and it's spelled with 2 C's. Like that's how they spell it on the menu. It's thick ranch is how they spell it. So
wow.
Anyway, ML Rose, everybody. Make sure if you are an SEC fan or just a non-Big Ten fan, make sure you're checking out the Bill and Doug show all across the internet, everywhere you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. Look, Indiana is such a fascinating story, and I was thinking, through my I grew up as a Big Ten fan from Madison. I grew up in a Big Ten family. So I remember Ron Dane fumbling against Northwestern, in the 90s. But Wisconsin had a couple cracks at it in the late 90s, and then again in 2011, where they had some really great, epically good teams, could never get over the hump. Michigan State with D'Antonio had some really great teams, couldn't get over the hump. It got into the playoff one year. Iowa in 2002 and 2008, and then again in that same year in the Big Ten championship game against Michigan State. We've seen programs that aren't sort of top tier, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, over the last 25 years, have these extraordinary seasons, and none of them can ever kind of truly break through for any variety of reasons. Some of it's the system, 2-team playoff, BCS, 4-team, whatever. But the Indiana thing feels different, and it feels different because obviously the rules are different. It also feels different because Curt Cignetti is, in my career, I don't know about you, but an unprecedented story, truly. Is history doomed to repeat itself in this situation when they have to go through brand like Alabama and a brand like Ohio State, and then maybe Georgia, maybe Oregon, maybe I don't know. Like, is it? I don't even know what the right question is, but why is Indiana built in a way that they can overcome in a situation where so many really great coaches and great teams and great quarterbacks weren't able to do that in the past?
Yeah, I think it's probably 2 things. One is that I don't know if anyone does it. There's not an SEC monster lurking like there has often been, I think, in the history of college football. And that if you think about Curt Cignetti in Indiana, and they're the number 1 seed, and they're the only undefeated team, and what they've done, and if it was like, wow, what an amazing season for Curt Cignetti, but wait until they see Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow, and they'd be like, oh my God, what are they going to do? It's like, what if that 2021 Georgia defense was waiting for them, right? What if the best of Nick Saban was waiting for them? And I don't think anybody in the SEC is just at that level right now. I don't know if anybody in college football is. So there's more opportunity that when you get to the top, I think the mountain is not quite as high as it used to be. So I think Indiana has a chance to scale that. And then obviously I did a breakdown. We have a Substack, Bill and I as well, where we also write about stuff. And I just broke down I like to look at the top 30 players on each team. That's just total number of snaps this year, offense and defense. That's the guys who really matter, a little bit beyond the starters. And there really is just a pretty stark divide between Ole Miss, Indiana, Texas Tech, and Miami as teams who really leaned on the transfer portal. And Ole Miss has 17 of their top 30 guys on the team right now that came in the transfer portal this offseason. Indiana, Miami, and Texas Tech, I think, all have 12 of 30. And then the other 4 teams, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and Oregon. Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State have like 2, 3, 4 of their top 30. I think Oregon has 9. Oregon and Miami are a little bit more in the middle, but it's really it's the old versus new in roster building in this playoff. And all 4 of the quarterfinals are an old versus a new, right? That you're seeing like Ohio State versus Miami is old versus new. Indiana, Alabama is old versus new. And so I certainly had some question coming into this year of like, okay, like you can get a lot of good players in the transfer portal, but I don't know if you can really build like a championship team in the portal in 1 year. And I think you can. Like, I don't know, like, I don't know how many people are still holding out of like, well, you don't have any camaraderie and that's how you build culture. It's like, I don't know. Look at these players. They're all pretty good.
Does it have to see, this is what I find interesting, because I think, and I'm not going to include Miami and Oregon because those are kind of bluer blood kind of brands. And Oregon and Miami both have done kind of a blend, right? They're this blend of
they're in the middle.
New. Yeah.
They're the blends.
But to me, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, and Indiana are stories that are not written in a previous version of this sport.
Never.
They're not. Now, the problem is though, they're still not close. They're still not as close to the championship as even the 4 teams that got into the playoff, as TCU did a couple years ago.
Sure.
So I think Indiana has to get there. But I do think they're different. Like, I think they're different somehow. And I think it's Cignetti that is the reason, because Joe McGuire's a really good coach. Unsure of what he does on game day in terms of like big stakes games, right? Same with Cristobal. Lots of questions about his in-game management. I think Pete Golding is I'm going to use the word volatile as a word to describe this man. I don't know what he brings to the table in terms of, and I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying we don't know how they respond in these big moments.
Sure.
I have no doubts about Curt Cignetti doing the right things for Indiana. He just feels different to me than even in that conversation you and I are having about this new version of a team. I agree with you, but he still feels different than even Ole Miss or Texas Tech.
So it's hard. It's hard to tell in the moment sometimes. But I like, is Indiana just Clemson? Is Curt Cignetti Dabo? That, I mean, you know, Clemson had that title in 1980 or whatever it was, but it's like Clemson was good, but like they weren't as down as Indiana is. But sometimes you get a truly unique coach in a spot, and it just is a little bit of magic. So like, is this a 2-year blip, or is this the beginning of? I remember when Curt Cignetti came in and coached from when he was 62 to when he was 82, and wound up as one of the greatest coaches in college football history. I don't know, but I think there's a couple things at play here. One is, even though like he's new to Indiana, the structure of that program's not new. Those assistants have been with him for a while. And I do think Mike Shanahan as the OC and Brian Haynes as the DC, they have 2 of the best coordinators in the country. And Cignetti has talked about that he brought his culture with him. So that's maybe different than Texas Tech and Ole Miss, where they're bringing people from all over the place. And there's still of the, I think 20 of their 30 guys overall, their top 30 are transfers at some point. And still 6 of those guys this year of their top 30 are JMU guys. So Elijah Surratt as a receiver, and Aiden Fisher, and Mikhail Kamara, and D'Angelo Pons on defense. These are guys who were with Cignetti before. So again, that's not quite like we're bringing a bunch of guys from all over the place and trying to make a team. This team moved with him to Indiana. So this has been a special 2-year run of, they just took one of the worst power conference teams and one of the best G6 teams and mashed them together, and they got a playoff team.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how he retains through this. I think, you know, it's like, can you get up there and make a run for a year or 2 through the portal? I think undeniably, yes. Can you retain when you're rebuilding every year? We just don't have enough data right now.
I mean, that was my
Heisman
concern.
winner.
I mean,
they're the Heisman winner.
That was, no question. That was my concern going into last year. It's like, oh, that was an extraordinary job.
For 1 year, and then
but how schedule
they
a
got
little
better.
you hit on a MAC quarterback, a better schedule than most teams in the Big Ten, and you capitalized. Great job. The performance against Notre Dame in the playoff was severely lacking from like a, I don't know, like it doesn't remind me. It's like the only game of the Signetti era where I'm like, that doesn't feel like a Signetti team. Like they didn't play the game the way I expected them to. I imagine that is different this time against Alabama, in particular because of the weaknesses for Alabama. Like there's no reason for Alabama to protect the quarterback or run the football in this game. Zero chance really for that to happen. And if it does, you got to give all the credit to former Indiana coach Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb. Look, they have a great defense, Alabama. They have a really, really talented quarterback, and their coaching staff is solid. But again, much like the Miami-Ohio State matchup, there's nothing on paper that tells you that Indiana should be challenged along the defensive line by anything that Alabama does. And if that's the case, why would they win the game? This is the problem I have with this whole entire round. I think the favorites are too good, and that concerns me, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Stephen Daly injury on the defensive line for Indiana is a big deal, so they're going to miss him. I do think Alabama and Miami are similar. I don't think Alabama and Miami can win the national championship because I don't think they can put 4 games together at the consistent level they need to. But is there a ceiling for 3.5 hours where they can surprise somebody? I think they have enough talent, and their peaks are high enough to do that. And that's also part of what you get into. It's part of the discussion we have about who should be in the playoff. But then once you're in the playoff, you kind of have some peak teams, some peaks and valleys versus the teams that have been pretty good, the entire year. And over a 12-game season, what should earn you a spot? But then once you get in this, again, like you might be able to upset the apple cart, but can you do it 4 straight times? But that's not what for this weekend, for these 2 days, we're just talking about what can happen on these 2 days. Can the best of, if Alabama plays its best game and Indiana's a little hurt on defense and there's one goofy play, like, I don't know, right? If Miami plays its best game and their defensive line can really destroy the game, and I don't know. I don't know that I would anticipate either of those things, but I think the peaks of teams like that are really interesting. Whereas over 3 months, it's like Indiana's better than Alabama and Ohio State's better than Miami. And there's no question about that over the 3 months, but we're not talking 3 months. We're talking 3 hours.
And I think that is sort of what the goal, maybe it wasn't like the spoken goal of the playoff, but we know the goal of the playoff for television reasons is to create drama and entertainment and to appointment viewing television. That's the goal, which for us college football fans is good quality games. We want to see evenly matched games. And I do think these 8 games are sort of indicative of what the goal of the playoff was to some degree, which is we have rosters built in different ways. We have coaches built in different ways. We have teams from all over the country regionally, and all 4 games opened as a point spread under 10, single-digit point spread. And to your point, I think all 8 teams can win the game. If you play your best game, I don't think there's not a team in this bracket right now that can't win a game, or 2 maybe. But I agree with you. I think it's Georgia and Ohio State that can win the whole thing. I think those are the 2 that I think are good enough to win 3 games from this moment on. And I would be surprised. Unfortunately, I'm rooting for Oregon or Texas Tech or Indiana because the story is great, or Ole Miss. But I do think Georgia and Ohio State are the best 2 football teams right now. And if they get by this round, they're going to play each other. And I don't know why that wouldn't, if you survive that game, I don't know why that wouldn't be the team that then goes on to win the final.
I do. I still think, I would believe that Ohio State and Indiana are still the 2 best teams. I think we saw the 2 best teams in that game. I do think Indiana with that defensive scheme, and they do have real talent at all 3 levels of the defense. And then again, they have the Heisman winner who can do some stuff with his legs, who can win games at the end of the game. He's got a little bit of that. It's like that Stetson Bennett kind of gumption at the end of games, which Gunnar Stockton has a pretty healthy dose of too. Gunnar Stockton's obviously pulled Georgia out of the fire multiple times this year. But do you have a quarterback that if you're at 4 minutes left and you're down 4 and you have the ball, how do you feel about that guy in that situation? I think Georgia fans would feel great about Gunnar Stockton. I think Indiana fans would feel great about Fernando Mendoza. And frankly, I think Oregon fans would feel really good about Dante Moore. And I think Ohio State fans would feel good about Julian Sayin. I think healthy Oregon, if their receivers get healthy, their run game has been really good. I think they do have a pretty good, it's not one of the 3 best defenses in the playoff. I think Texas Tech, Ohio State, and Indiana are the 3 best defenses in the playoff, but I think Oregon's pretty good. I think Georgia's pretty good, right? So healthy Oregon also intrigues me. Ohio State, Oregon was my national championship pick to get there, because that's
where I'm at too.
We haven't quite seen that
requires
healthy.
this is my issue with Indiana. It's not disrespectful to Indiana's quality. That's not what I mean here. I think they got unlucky on the draw. Like having to beat two teams to win a national title that you already beat is just inherently more difficult. Like Ohio State's going to have revenge on their mind. Oregon's going to have revenge on their mind. That's 2 rounds in a row. You beat Alabama. Yes. You got to go beat 2 teams. Probably. Again, I'm picking Oregon and
sure,
probably Ohio State. So, if Ohio State has just beaten Georgia and then gets the rematch, it's going to be very hard to beat that Ohio State team in that situation. Yes. And I would say the same for Georgia. If Georgia beats Ohio State, because you could argue Ohio State's the best team in America, and if they beat Ohio State, they're sitting there looking at either Oregon or Indiana going, or Texas Tech, I guess, for that matter. But I think Texas Tech has less of an opportunity in that situation. I think you're challenged, you're battle tested. You've won like 12 in a row. You've survived everything. You've beaten 2 of the best teams in America, and now you're sitting there looking at Indiana. That's a tough ask for Indiana, and it's not meant to be disrespectful to them at all in any way, shape, or form.
And Oregon was the best team in the country last year and got the doors blown off in a quarterfinal by Ohio State. Right? It is. I think the good thing, I like 12. I think this is the right number of teams. I think where the cut line came this year was pretty good. There were 7 teams with 2 regular season losses and 3 got in and 4 didn't. I think that's kind of the right place. You're having some teams like who just making the playoff is a great celebration for them. And then you're making it a tough road. And I don't, is it going to be the best regular season team that wins the national championship? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I think, that's not disrespectful to Indiana to say it's a tough road. And it's just like, it's interesting stuff. If we get Ohio State, Georgia, all Ohio State's going to be thinking about it, that 22 semifinal, right? Like that is stuck in their craw about losing that game on the missed field goal at the end against Georgia. And then if we somehow would get, if we get Indiana, Oregon, right? That Indiana beat Oregon this regular season, as you said. If we get Oregon, Ohio State, Oregon got knocked out of the playoff last year. Right, by Ohio State, and that kind of stuff can matter, especially in a long playoff where you're kind of worn down and it's like, oh yeah, remember these guys beat us, we're mad. That gives us an edge.
Well, and if Ole Miss wins, I am completely of the belief that it's exclusively galvanization in the locker room. Like that, if they beat Georgia this weekend, it is exclusively because they have looked at each other and said, like F the noise, like this is about us in here.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens with a great locker room. Sometimes great locker rooms and teams do special things. So, all right, you got final predictions for me in the Indiana, Ohio State, all 4 of these games. You want to rattle through real quickly who you got to win?
Yeah.
I haven't asked you about Oregon, but I think Oregon is so good across the board. They have so much talent, and I think they might be the best combination of coach and quarterback potentially left, which is saying a lot. They're all really good. So if you want to roll through some of these games, I know you're being very gracious with your time. So
yeah, so Ohio State and in this game, I think like 9.5 feels about right. I thought that felt a little heavy on the line, but I ended up picking Ohio State 23-13. I think it's pretty low scoring. I just don't see how Miami does a ton. But also, I don't think Ohio State's going to light it up with respect for the Miami defense. I still will take Indiana against Alabama. I mean, to be honest, I had a stretch this year where I kept waiting for somebody to get Alabama, and then Alabama always found a way. I think I picked against Alabama 6 straight weeks in the regular season. I was like, this is going to now Tennessee's going to get no, it's going to be, and was wrong and wrong and wrong again. But I do think. I really think their coordinator pair is really special, and I do think that give those guys some time to game plan. I think that's enough. I'll take Oregon over Texas Tech. I think like you go through everybody, and again, there's probably like 5 of the 8 teams are defense first, and another one's probably like split evenly. Ole Miss is one of the maybe one of the 2. We're not talking about Ole Miss. Here's why I want to talk about Ole Miss. I think the 2 probably weakest units left are the Ole Miss defense and the Texas Tech offense. So I think Oregon's balance beats Texas Tech, and then I think Georgia's balance beats Ole Miss. Although we're talking revenge again, I don't know. You would know better than me. How mad's Ole Miss? Are they mad that they thought they had a shot at Georgia and didn't quite get it done in the regular season? Is that part of this analysis or no?
I think it absolutely is. The question is it enough? Like, I think being sort of galvanized over the last 2 months with the Kiffin story and then having a 9-point lead in Athens, and having Gunnar Stockton do sort of like hero ball stuff in the fourth quarter, go 17-0. I think all of it plays into Ole Miss and why the point spread is the second lowest number on the board. The problem is Georgia is playing so well on both sides of the ball. Like all their players are playing their best football right now, and that would be the concern is that their defense is better today than it was 2 months ago. Their offense is better today than it was 2 months ago. Like everybody's they're the ones that's growing throughout the course of the season, and that's the thing that like that's the thing that could win this tournament moving forward is like you can slip up early, you can have a loss in the middle of the season, but you know, and I know last year's Ohio State team was different because of the Michigan game. Like if that Michigan game wasn't there and they had lost early, we would say, oh, Ohio State was just getting better the whole year and then, you know, dominated with great players. Oregon for me is they've played every type of game. That's what I like about this Oregon team. Like they're okay going in the rain to Iowa and playing a muck it up game where they run the ball 48 times. And then they can beat James Madison with a 51 burger. Like they're okay kind of playing however you want to play. And Texas Tech's defense is great, but they're not going to score a ton. And so Oregon can play that type of game, I feel like.
I agree.
So,
yeah.
I just the problem is I like all 4 favorites, and that's generally not how sports works.
Yeah. But it's hard, and I think people were still it lingers in the back of our head, even though we kind of dismiss it, right? That all the 4 teams that had buys last year lost, but that was clearly a different situation. And Ohio State, Oregon, you got caught by a hot team, and then like the other 2, you know, the 3 and 4 seeds shouldn't have been the 3 and 4 seeds. So, like I think the rust versus rest discussion, sometimes we can spend too much time on it. I'll be curious if we feel like it makes a difference at all in these games because we don't have weird seeding, and I think we'll get a better feel for things. Like, could it be that Ole Miss or Miami or a team like that just comes out and has a great first quarter, and it's like, oh man, they're building on some momentum from last week where these other teams have been sitting around for 3 weeks. I'm not really using that in my analysis of picking winners because I'm picking the favorites just like you are. But I'm curious if we feel that in a game where it's like, oh man, Bama came out like they got motivated off finding a way against Oklahoma. And boom, it's 14-3 at the end of the first quarter, and now you know that mattered.
Yeah, and I do. Miami and Bama, of course, battle tested with very high stress snaps all in the second half. Oregon and Ole Miss, no stressful snaps in the second half. So I don't even know if that's a factor or not. So we'll see. Doug, tell everybody where they can find you. Substack, YouTube, podcast. Tell everybody.
Yeah, so my partner Bill Andis and I, we have a show we call the Bill and Doug Show. Just type that in. You'll find it on YouTube. You'll find it on any podcast feed. We do a lot of Ohio State. We do a lot of national college football. And then we also have a Substack. If you've ever been over on Substack, it's a lovely place. Bill and Doug OSU.substack.com. We do some extra pods over there, a lot of writing about Ohio State. But, you know, we used to have another show that we did where we talked a lot about Northern college ball. So we kind of still view the sport from that angle, and I do it. Tell the SEC to cram it, even on the show that we have now.
No, it's all good. You're one of the best in the business. I always appreciate chatting with you guys. You have great perspective. The Bill and Doug Show, check it out. Substack, YouTube, podcast apps of choice. Really, really good stuff as well. ML Rose, of course, in Middle Tennessee. 7 great locations, soon to be 8 in Murfreesboro. So if you ever come down here to Nashville, which I know a lot of folks, both in the Deep South and the Midwest, like to do. So if you're here and you want a great place to watch games, a great set of drink specials, great beer options, great burgers, make sure you check out ML Rose. Chicken wings are fantastic.
I'm coming, man.
Yeah,
you're selling me on this. I'm going to be there.
I'll take you out, you know, big time. I'll spend at least I'll get the $30 per diem for you, my guy. All right.
I can get an app. I can get an app too. I'm getting an app.
Yeah, oh yeah, we'll get an app. Always a pleasure, my guy. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thumbs up, notifications turned on the YouTube page as well. 5 stars on the podcast app of choice. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. Doug, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Braden. Always fun, man.
Everybody out there, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.